The wait is finally over. We are finally here. The week of the 2023 NFL Draft claps
Woo!
around. It's been a very, very long offseason, and it's finally time to put the rumors and everything else to rest whenever the commissioner steps on the stage to announce the first overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. But we do have a couple more days to get the windmill, the trade mill rumor thing going a little
Yes.
bit longer. We're going to squeeze some of those out today. For Richie Bradshaw, my name is Donnie Druin. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. Go to follow our work on Twitter at Donnie Druin, at Richie Brads36, and of course, follow all of our work at si.com/NFL/Cardinals or allcardinals.com down on the video below. Richie, a lot of NFL draft rumors heating up. We are 3 days away from this bad boy getting underway. We're going to talk about 5 different NFL draft rumors, and we're going to buy or sell them. Before we get into any of that, it's 90 degrees right now. I think it's hot enough already in the state of Arizona. If it could stay like this forever, I would be cool with that. But obviously, it is not. How are you?
It's a beautiful day outside as far as I'm concerned. I'm good. I just have a bunch of weeding to do. I took care of my front yard on Saturday, and I was like, my backyard looks equally terrible. So got that to do, but got to take care of it while it's 90-degree weather.
Well, we're 28 years old. You had mentioned that after you got done pulling weeds the other day, how you felt muscles you didn't even know that you previously had, right?
Oh, I'm still sore, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to aggravate it even more, but it's got to be done. Or I can pay the
after
neighbor kids $10, but
that's a move. That's a move. I think that's a win-win for everybody involved.
Probably.
And hopefully there's going to be a lot of win-wins for NFL teams in the draft looking to upgrade their rosters somehow, some way. And Richie, we're going to get this started hopefully with something fairly easy. The first buy or sell rumor we're going to talk about, Bryce Young going number 1 to the Carolina Panthers. Now, this was not always a foregone conclusion like people are talking about it present day. If you remember, CJ Stroud actually was the betting favorite for, I would say, probably a month before Young rumors eventually kind of forced themselves back in. Now, if you look in the betting markets, Bryce Young is head and shoulders the favorite. I think he's probably somewhere around minus 1,500 to minus 2,000 to be the guy. Any doubts as to this? It's always been Bryce Young, quarterback 1 for me. A little nod to the draft day movie, Bryce Young, no matter what, if I'm the Panthers on the sticky note.
Yeah, no. Bryce Young is also my quarterback 1. I don't worry about the size too much. Kyler Murray has had success at the next level. And I mean, short of like getting, the non-contact injury on a run, that's just freak. Kyler Murray has been relatively healthy. He has missed time, but it hasn't been to the extent that people believe. And Bryce Young is a very similar build, not quite the dynamic runner, but still mobile. I don't really worry about him. And I think that his abilities as a passer alone make him the top quarterback in this class. I think that the Panthers, if they are looking for the quarterback of the future, should look at the best quarterback in the draft. And don't get me wrong, CJ Stroud is a terrific passer. Anthony Richardson's upside is through the roof, and then there's Will Levis. But I think that I think that Bryce Young is probably the right move, but it's not a coincidence that the Panthers have been linked to all 4 of these guys. Remember, Donnie, before they traded up to number 1, there were tons of rumors that Will Levis was the guy in Carolina. They absolutely loved him to pieces. They jump up to the number 1 spot. All of a sudden, CJ Stroud is the favorite. They've also been rumored to really like Anthony Richardson, and how can they not when they've had a quarterback very similar to him in Cam Newton before? But Bryce Young being the favorite now, I think it makes sense. I'm buying this.
Yeah, and I'm buying it too, and I don't really think there's any questions at this point. And it's funny because whenever the Panthers first made the move to number 1 from number 9, right, whatever they traded with Chicago,
yes.
Everybody's saying, well, like the Panthers don't exactly have their guy. They just wanted to put themselves in position to get their pick to the litter. I think they've wanted Bryce Young for a very, very long time, and they've done an extremely good job of making sure other quarterbacks have received a little bit of attention as well. Really quick, off the hinging off the buy or sell rumor, were you buying any of those rumors that they would have potentially dropped down to number 2 after trading up to number 1? Because remember, that was the rumor floated around for a little bit.
No, not at all. I think when you make that kind of capital investment where you're sending multiple first-round picks, you're sending a guy who should have had a Pro Bowl by now, but somehow hasn't, and DJ Moore, like you're making that investment to get your quarterback, Donnie. You're not making that investment to get the second quarterback of the litter. You're going for your guy. You can't trade down, because if Bryce Young is the number one pick and that's their guy, you screwed up. Call a spade, as Richie Bradshaw has famously said many a times.
Yeah, spade is spade indeed, and nothing really knows what's going to unfold in the cards until Thursday. Wink, wink. What a pun right there. Buy or sell, draft rumor number 2. Texans don't draft a quarterback at number 2, and I think Bryce Young has probably been the pick for a really long time. It was assumed that whoever was not picked out of Young or Stroud at number 1 would fall to Houston at number 2. Then the Texans would be more happy to get whatever quarterback that fell and then walk up to the podium, make the pick. And that was kind of it. Now, recently, that line of thinking has changed, doing a complete 180. Now there's talk about Houston potentially not going quarterback at all and probably taking a guy like Will Anderson Jr. off the edge. You had written about this a little bit earlier today. Go ahead. We'll drop the article and the link below this video. But, I mean, the Cardinals would be big winners from this, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But do you think there actually is a possibility that Texans would not go quarterback at 2?
I am buying that 100%. I think that you've got a brand new head coach in DeMeco Ryans, who has a history as a defender in the NFL. He played linebacker for a very long time for the Texans and Eagles, played at a high level, defensive rookie of the year, Pro Bowler a handful of times, goes to San Francisco, learns under Robert Saleh, takes control of the defense as the coordinator, and Nick Bosa wins Defensive Player of the Year. The safety, I don't want to butcher his name. I'm not going to butcher his name. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. He's their safety.
Yeah.
He was a first team All-Pro. You've got Dre Greenlaw. You've got Fred Warner. You've got Eric Armstead. Like, he got the most out of every single person on that roster. Trevarius Ward was one of the top 10 corners in the league that we didn't talk about. He goes to Houston. What's he have to work with? He's got Derek Stingley Jr. and Jalen Petrie. Other than that, there's not really any key cornerstones here that he can work with. And he's going to want his Nick Bosa off the edge. And what better way to get a Nick Bosa kind of prospect than with Will Anderson, who's a blue chip guy. He's the number 1 player in this class for probably 90% of people. He's certainly my number 1 player. The upside is tremendous. He's gotten comparisons to DeMarcus Ware. You can't turn down that possibility. What I'm curious to see is the Texans have another first-round pick at 12. Could they use that pick to trade up and get their quarterback? Something to keep in mind. But as far as this goes, do I buy the Texans not drafting a quarterback at 1? Yes. And I feel incredibly confident about that. You guys will find out on my mock draft that drops on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think there's 2 kind of schools of method when it comes to building a football team. You either draft a quarterback and build around them, or you draft a team and then, you build a team, then you actually go get a quarterback and kind of, plug them in the system and go from there. DeMeco Ryans knows what a successful team looks like, and a successful team more times than not has a very successful defense, especially a front 7. And I think obviously we've talked to great length about Will Anderson on the show and the kind of things he can do in the Cardinals uniform. He can very much do those same things in the Texans uniform. I think, especially with Houston having the number 12 pick as well, more than anything, Texans would be more than happy to go get a couple of guys to help set the tone on defense, because they have Davis Mills at quarterback. They have Case Keenum at quarterback. I don't think they feel any pressure to go take a guy. And, we can go back and forth on who's quarterback 1, who's quarterback 2 all day. If the Texans don't have their guy sitting at them at number 2, and let's be real, it's no secret they want Bryce Young. They have wanted Bryce Young this entire time, even back dating to the regular season. But Lovie Smith doing Lovie Smith things, gets Chicago out and does the Bears a favor one last time before he skips out of Houston by ensuring the Texans win and then jump to the number 2 pick. They wanted Bryce Young the entire time, and I think now it's kind of like a conclusion that Young is going number 1 to Carolina. I've always been a big proponent of, if you're not sold on the guy, they're not going to take him no matter what the team need is, no matter the position, no matter the value. And let's not forget, there's 2 very, very good, maybe even 3 very, very good quarterback prospects entering 2024. I know you never know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to be in position to get them.
Dude.
Exactly. It's a stacked class, and the Texans are obviously not just one quarterback away. I think D'Amico Ryans and company are very, very comfortable of where they're sitting. And worst comes to worst, whenever they exit out of the top 12 with their 2 picks, they're going to have 2 very, very good young players to help that rebuild.
Yep. And there's one more thing I want to add before we get next to our buy and sell rumor. I think the most important thing when you're building a team, and especially for a young front office with Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans that are running the show, never force the quarterback, especially if it's not your guy. The Texans should not look at this scenario and say, man, we got to get Stroud. We got to get Levis. We got to get Richardson. If they're not high enough on your board, if you have Bryce Young at number 1 and your next quarterback is like 5, then you just need to take the best player available. Will Anderson is that guy. I think that the Texans are nowhere near close to competing, and getting a quarterback and placing him in a bad situation could potentially ruin this quarterback with Houston and continue to set them backwards. Right now, the Texans are a team that needs to add talent, and the best way to do that is to go best player available until you're in a position to get either a generational quarterback or your top guy. Don't force the issue. Take a look at the best player available, even if it's not Will Anderson, if it's Jalen Carter, if it's I don't even know, some other dude potentially.
Gonzalez, Tyree Wilson.
It could be Gonzalez, Tyree Wilson. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people link Tyree Wilson to Houston lately. Some people believe he's a better fit there. But the bottom line, Donnie, you just need to add talent to this team. Don't force a quarterback. That is the absolute worst thing that you can do right now.
Yeah, I'm also going to buy that rumor as well. I don't think the Texans are pressed at all to get their quarterback. They know eventually down the line they'll have another opportunity to go get their guy. And I think the talents of Will Anderson or another, whoever they value as the top defensive prospect in the class, will do wonders over there under D'Amico Ryans. That actually ties into the next buy or sell we're going to do. Cardinals stay at number 3. Now, I don't think this is going to happen. I'm just going to come out and say sell, 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 because I think the Cardinals are going to be all in no matter what happens and or transpires in the first 2 picks. There's a lot of smoke about them potentially not getting the haul that they want. Let me ask you, what is an offer so bad that you are going to say no? Because in my eyes, Young goes number 1. For shits and giggles, we'll say that Will Anderson goes number 2. You have CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson on the board. I think more than anything, that is going to skyrocket the value of the number 3 pick for teams right underneath him to go move up and go potentially get their guy.
Yeah, that's something I talked about on All Cardinals. You guys check out that article if you haven't already. But this is the best case scenario for a quarterback to go number 1 and then Will Anderson to go number 2. Now you have 3 quarterbacks instead of 2 quarterbacks for a team to trade up. And we also have to understand that there's teams that don't have Bryce Young as quarterback 1. There's going to be teams that have Anthony Richardson number 1. There's going to be teams that have CJ Stroud as number 1. There's going to be some teams that are crazy and have Will Levis quarterback 1. Like
I love the anti-Will Levis agenda being pushed right now.
Look, man, he's an elite athlete. There's upside there.
But Josh Allen, look what Josh Allen did.
That's exactly it, right? Because he's a big, talented white guy who's got an arm and can run around. So, but the bottom line here, Donnie, is there's going to be teams like the Raiders, the Colts, who are right behind you, the Falcons, the Texans, who could come up, like I mentioned, the Titans. There's oddballs like Washington or Minnesota. There's a lot of teams here that are going to look at their quarterback board that might not have Young there and go, that's our guy. We need to go up and get him. And it could be Stroud or anyone else. And that's what's going to help the Cardinals is there's more quarterback options here. There's more teams that will call them because they'll be like, that's my guy. Because let's say it goes Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. You might have just eliminated half of the people who want to come up for a quarterback because that could be quarterback 1, quarterback 2 for that team. Do you really want to draft quarterback 3 when your guys are off the board? Like, that's the kind of situation that you could be in. But if only Bryce Young is gone, you remain wide open to the possibilities of several teams calling you to move up. So that's the best case scenario. As far as the rumor here, buy or sell, the Cardinals staying at 3, I just don't see it because I think there's too many teams that need a quarterback that are willing to move up for their quarterback. There's plenty of guys this year. There's 4 guys. Best case scenario, 3 are available. Worst case scenario, 2 are available. There's going to be teams that have these guys at the top of their board. They want to move up. The Cardinals, maybe they don't get a King's ransom like an RG3 trade or a Trey Lance trade, but they can still get really good value by moving down the board. And you got to remember, this is a new GM, Monty Ossenfort. This guy's going to want as many at-bats as possible to get singles and home runs and all that good stuff. Like, he wants those opportunities to build this team in his image. There's no better way to do that than with more capital. The Cardinals, I don't think they're staying at 3 unless Will Anderson is there, because if it goes quarterback 1, quarterback 2, again, you might not get the calls that you want. And worst case scenario, you take an elite defender and give him to Jonathan Gannon, a defensive coordinator with the Eagles who took them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I'm going to play off that a little bit too. Even if quarterbacks do go number 1 and number 2, you're still going to have plenty of teams trying to move up and trying to get their next quarterback, only because they know they cannot sit there and wait. And granted, like you said, are you going to get a King's ransom? Probably not if 2 quarterbacks are off the board, but you're a first-time GM, clearly going through a rebuild, no matter how much Jonathan Gannon wants to refute it.
Right.
The Cardinals are fully in a rebuild, right? And I get it. I admire the want to win games, and I respect that. But
have that
clearly trying to build this thing from the ground up once again, you need, and I'm going to use another metaphor here. If you're GM, you're going to want as many lottery tickets as possible. You know, they always have that saying in the NFL to where a GM will take 1 winning lottery ticket and happily exchange it for 5 more. Right. So even if Will Anderson is available on the board, I mean, we've even heard things such as like Tyree Wilson going to number 3, because the Cardinals were apparently one of the teams that did pass him through the medicals. And there's a lot to like about Tyree Wilson. Whereas, you know, obviously the draft process, you hear and see some things about Will Anderson, the undersized. He doesn't exactly have the freakish athleticism and traits that a guy like Tyree Wilson was. We can go back and forth on that all day. But case in point, the Cardinals are a 4-13 football team that got worse over the offseason. You have a new regime in. They're going to want to stockpile draft capital to help better fill those holes. And the only way you're going to do that is by trading down. And you know what? I think if you're a Cardinals fan and they walk away with Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson come draft night, you're super happy. If they trade down, get a guy like Christian Gonzalez, get a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. or somebody else like that, you're happy. The Cardinals are in a win-win scenario, but I just think there's no way to stay at 3. I think there's no way to stay at 3.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Yeah, you just, again, I can't echo this enough. Monty Ossenfort is not only the new GM of the Cardinals, he's a first-time general manager. He's going to want that. I understand, and I typically am of the opinion of quality over quantity, but we have to understand the situation, the scenario, and the circumstances that Ossenfort is in. He's going to want as many picks as possible.
Yep. Certainly agree. Draft rumor number 4, buy or sell. CJ Stroud falls out of the top 5. Really quick before you give your input on this, we've been fans of the NFL for a long time. We've been closely following the draft process for an obvious shorter amount of time than that. The 180 that's been done on CJ Stroud, going from quarterback 1 to talk of him not even being taken in the top 7 now by some people. Peter King, I think, was the guy who reported that. Crazy. And it's all happened over the last couple weeks. What happened?
I think that this is overthinking season, and it's a classic time to put out misinformation. We got to remember there are smoke screens, people. If you don't know that term, like if you're brand new to the draft, a smoke screen is something that, to the extent a team will put out misinformation to see if they can get somebody to fall down the board, and no better candidate here than CJ Stroud, who was arguably the second best quarterback in this draft. You'll find people that have him as the best quarterback in this draft. But Donnie, let me tell you this. It's not like we haven't seen this before. And funny enough, it's with Ohio State quarterbacks. Justin Fields was talked about as the number 2 pick in the 2021 draft. And what happened? He dropped to 10, to Chicago. Dwayne Haskins was talked about as the potential number one quarterback in the draft. Could have been a top 5 pick, probably. He was in the same class as Daniel Jones. That I was, let me think. 2019 was Daniel Jones. Yes, 2019 was Daniel Jones. So Kyler Murray was the number one pick. The Niners could have fancied Dwayne Haskins there. Like there is that possibility, but instead he falls out of the top 10. I believe he's the 15th, maybe the 16th overall pick by Washington. For what it's worth, both teams traded up to get Dwayne Haskins and to get Justin Fields, just for what it's worth. But we've seen this time and time again, not just with Ohio State quarterbacks either. I'm not trying to push that narrative. It's just funny, like it's poetry. But there is that possibility.
No, absolutely. And kind of touching on the whole Ohio State quarterback thing, there's an aura that follows those guys. And I know a lot of people don't like scouting the helmet.
Yep.
You know, but when you look at the offense that Ohio State runs, it's a lot of one read kind of stuff. And so what a lot of people follow just in terms of thinking, Ohio State quarterbacks generally have a tougher time processing and going through reads and making decisions at the NFL level compared to other quarterbacks. And I think building off that, if we want to talk about the S2 score that a guy like CJ Stroud had, for those who don't know, the S2 is kind of like a cognitive test that measures somebody's like decision making, ability to progress and like read through things. It's not a brand new test because I think it's been done for a couple of years now, but NFL teams are starting to value it a little bit more whenever it comes to kind of like IQ and football IQ. I think out of 100, Bryce Young scored in the 90s. I think Will Levis scored in the 90s. I think Anthony Richardson was right around that like high 80, early 90 range. And CJ Stroud had like an 18 out of 100, which does not play well into his favor. And then you're seeing all these things about how, like he wouldn't be a great quarterback at the next level for like X, Y, and Z. And you take that score, and it's a lot of negative CJ Stroud. I wasn't his biggest fan whenever I went over his tape. Granted, I didn't watch a whole lot of it. I would rather take a guy like Bryce Young. But see, like that's the thing. He's such like a polarizing figure. Like I feel like he's either a guy that you will pound the table for in the war room, or you're just going to completely drop him and remove him from the board.
I still would take Bryce Young over him, but I'm of the opinion, and people are going to call me crazy, but hear me out. Bryce Young, the best complete prospect in this draft, but I think as a pure passer and thrower of the football, Stroud is the best quarterback here. I'm just so confident in the way that he's able to deliver those strikes. And again, we can talk about the Ohio State offense, one read, spread, and look at the weapons that he's thrown to. He threw to Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, 2 first-round picks, Jackson Smith and the Jigba, probably a first-round pick, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibukum, 2 more guys that are going to be first-round picks next year. Like, I understand that he's had no shortage of talent to throw to, but nonetheless, he still has to get the ball there. He still has to be the guy to run the offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not orchestrating this offense. He's doing his singular assignment. Stroud is orchestrating the offense here. And as a whole, I think that CJ Stroud is a safe prospect, Donnie. Like, he's so white bread. Like, it's so easy to just like him, in my opinion. But at the same time, there's going to be people that are like, well, what's his ceiling? Well, his ceiling might be Jared Goff, but Jared Goff has been a quality quarterback for a long, long time. So bottom line here, I think that CJ Stroud is a good, safe prospect. The NFL, Donnie, though, we have to remember, what do we talk about? Lottery tickets. CJ Stroud is not the $100 million lottery ticket that you typically go for when you put in your Powerball numbers. He's not that guy, but he's still good. And that is why, long, elongated answer here, I am buying that CJ Stroud could fall out of the top 10. Should he? No, he should not. He should be the 3rd overall pick for whoever trades up. But he could. I absolutely see it. I'll be even crazier I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked. I could see a scenario like of the 14,805 possibilities that Doctor Strange looked at. There is one scenario where CJ Stroud falls out of the top 10.
Oh, man. I don't see a quarterback needy team like Indy. Seattle's done a lot of homework on quarterbacks too. Let's not forget that. Detroit is comfortable with Jared Goff. I'm sure if they wanted, if Seattle at number 5, a team who loves to trade back in the first round, by the way, like no team loves moving back more than Seattle. If they approach Seattle and we're like, hey, a couple day 2 picks, call it good just to move back, maybe.
By the way, 14,605. But
dude,
anyways,
you have Seattle at 5, Detroit at 6, Atlanta at 7, like Tennessee at 11. Dude,
Houston at 12, Washington, Minnesota. These are teams that are rumored to be willing.
Whether Indy or Seattle straight up take him in the top 5 or another team moves up, I don't think Indy's going to trade down, but whether another team moves up to, let's say, like number 5 to go get him, dude, it's just tough for me to buy him falling out of the top 5. But I mean, crazy stuff happens each and every year. And every year, crazy stuff happens, man.
Would you personally say that Daniel Snyder would be out of his mind if he passed on CJ Stroud at 5? Because I would.
No.
I would say that's insane for the pure value.
But okay, but then that gets into like, what do you value CJ Stroud as? Because if you talk to like, I feel like half the people around the league, you're talking to CJ Stroud as maybe a guy who can get it done, maybe. But then you talk to the other 50%, you're like, man, like this kid has a ceiling. Like this kid has a higher ceiling than Bryce Young.
Right.
So, dude, it's all about how Seattle values him. And let's not forget, they just extended Geno Smith. I think they're more than comfortable with rolling with him for the next few years. But Pete Carroll did come out and say, hey, look, we've done quarterbacks. Geno knows we've done homework on quarterbacks too. It's not this like big secret. Maybe if he's there, and like you said, man, the opportunity to get a guy with the potential of CJ Stroud there at number 5, that might be too good for him to pass up on.
I promise you this. Maybe this is a bold take. They will not be having a top 5 pick next year. Denver will be better than what they were this year. That doesn't mean much. They could be an 8-9 team and still have a top 12 pick. But I am willing to go out on a limb here. I'm not shaving my beard. We already covered that. I am willing to go out on a limb that Denver's not picking top 5 next year, which means no Caleb Williams, no Drake May, no Quinn Ewers, or whoever else you value.
I agree. All right, the 5th and final rumor, inspired by you. I never really put too much thought into this before this week. By selling a team like the Minnesota Vikings trading up for a quarterback. Now, you have the typical teams in the top 10. Then you have Tennessee at number 11. So we'll kind of lump them in 2. Then you have that little break of teams who like don't really need a quarterback in like the mid-teens, and then you get to like the early 20s, where there's maybe a handful of teams such as the Minnesota Vikings who do have a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, but maybe want to make the jump and go and move into the top 3 to top 5 to go get quarterback, such as CJ Stroud, such as Will Levis, such as Anthony Richardson. I feel like you've done a little bit more homework on this to me, so I'll just give the will to you.
Listen, it would take an astronomical trade just to get into the top 10.
Are we talking like Ricky Williams, Dallas Cowboys, New Orleans Saints trade?
I think the Vikings learned their lesson from the Cowboys trade.
Okay.
And I pray we never see another Ricky Williams trade. That to trade an entire draft class for a dude is insane. But I do think that if you want to get that high, it obviously starts with 3 first-round picks. That includes this year. So 2023, 24, 25. It starts there, and you're going to have to add more. You might have to add players. You might have to say goodbye to Zadarius Smith, who is wanted out for what it's worth. I mean, that's no secret. Dalvin Cook is another guy they've been shopping around. You could lose some talented guys, but to get your quarterback of the future for a Vikings team that is kind of in limbo right now, I don't think this is a another NFC championship team, not NFC North championship team. But I don't think they're last place in the division either. They're this weird team where it's like they're either 8-9 or they're like 11-6. I
They're
don't
like
know.
Jeff Fisher with the Rams, just like not a
Yes.
perennial playoff team, but like not bad enough to pick in
Yeah,
the top
you
five.
can't count them out. And
Yep.
that is the Kirk Cousins effect, is he's good enough. And Donnie, he's 34 years old. He is probably past his peak at this point. Getting that young guy in there, whether it's Stroud, Richardson, who, I don't know, man, Richardson, Dante Culpepper reminds you a little bit. Maybe it's Will Levis. But anyway, there is that opportunity here for the Vikings to hop up, get their quarterback of the future, develop him behind Kirk Cousins, not have a time frame. Like, imagine an Anthony Richardson who needs time to develop, and you make the trade to go up for him, and you take a year, maybe 2 years behind Kirk Cousins to get him ready, and then you put him out there and he gets to throw to Justin Jefferson. That's a great scenario. Like, that's all I'm saying here is you have to strongly consider it. Look at some of the former playoff teams that weren't afraid to go up. Houston jumped from the mid-20s into the top 10 to get Deshaun Watson. At the time, that worked out. He was a top 5 quarterback across the league. That worked out for them at the time. The Chiefs moved out of the late 20s to get up to the 10th pick to take Patrick Mahomes. You think they regret that? No, not at all. So no matter where they try to move up, if it's with Seattle that we talked about is always willing to move down, if it's Detroit, who's in a good situation to just add some talent, or if it's the Cardinals that are looking to trade down.
You brought that up to me earlier in the day whenever we were texting. For them to drop 20 spots to 23, dude,
It'd be a king's ransom.
It would have to be. It would have to be. And then maybe I'm looking at a couple like young players too to take off that roster
Donnie,
as well.
Is there any price on a franchise quarterback if you get Stroud or Richardson and they turn into top 10 quarterbacks? That's a win every single time. Quarterback is the most important position in football. It's argued as the most position across the 4 major sports. Having your guy is so gosh darn important. You should be willing to move up whatever it takes. As Captain America said, that's another Avengers reference for you.
No, I agree, but that also goes into the argument too, where, I mean, who do the Vikings have at quarterback number 1? Because are you going to give up that much draft capital for the second or third best quarterback in the draft?
Right. I mean, there's smoke too that they like Hendon Hooker, and you could potentially get Hendon Hooker with the 23rd pick. So I feel like by the end of Thursday, the Vikings will have drafted a quarterback. Where they drafted him and who they drafted him, I don't know. But I do feel confident in that. Yes, sir.
Sorry, really quick. If Hendon Hooker is healthy, how different is the quarterback conversation we're having right now?
I think he's top 20. And I'll tell you what, if he's 2 years younger, if he's a 23-year-old quarterback not coming off an ACL tear, you make the argument for the number 1 pick.
Interesting.
Yes. The dude had a Heisman campaign this year. Donnie, do you know how many interceptions Hendon Hooker has thrown in 2 years at Tennessee?
I can't say I do.
5. Do you know how many touchdowns he's thrown?
40.
Almost 60. He's got almost a 30-2 touchdown to pick ratio as a passer. And he's got rushing upside. If he was 23 and healthy, you make an argument for number 1, but he's 25 coming off an ACL, and we still might see him in the first round. Yep. At a minimum, I think he's a top 50 pick. He makes sense for the Vikings that can let him recover from that ACL tear while they start Kirk Cousins. That makes a lot of sense to me. But like I said, I think by the end of Thursday, the Vikings will have drafted a quarterback. If it's a 23 or if it's in the top 10 or the top 5, I think they're getting a quarterback on Thursday.
All right, brings us back up to the Vikings, though, trading up for a quarterback or a team like the Vikings right around that lower 20s range. I'm selling. I just think that's going to be a massive trade haul. It's going to take a lot of dominoes to fall for both ends to get a deal done. It's just a lot.
Nope, I had it right. Hold this. It's an L. It's
Okay.
for you. I will give you a gentleman's bet.
Sure.
That the Vikings trade up for a quarterback.
I'm listening.
Gentleman's bet. Loser has to shave off their eyebrows.
Oh, no. Shake. I'll shake on that. Sure. Not the eyebrows.
The stupidest bet ever.
Not the eyebrows. Wrapping up here, I mean, like other trade rumors, we can not trade rumors. I keep saying that. And other NFL draft rumors we could talk about. Bijan Robinson, top 10. I don't think you're buying that. I'm not buying that either. Very, very talented runner. But I think, are you? No.
I am. I buy it. I do. Donnie, there could be an argument. Not for me personally. There is an argument out there. Regardless of position, Bijan Robinson is the most talented player in the class. He just unfortunately plays running back, which we devalue. But imagine the Falcons going with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and they've got some interesting depth there, like a Tyler Algier who just ran for 1,000 yards. And the very obvious choice is the Eagles, and putting Bijan Robinson in the backfield with Jalen Hurts and having the ability to throw to Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Dallas Goedert. There is no solution at that point. That is a 30-point per game team. I'm not saying to do it, okay? I am firmly no running back in the top 10. I don't care how talented they are. Like, it just typically does not work out. I'm still buying it because I think that a team is going to look at Bijan and they're going to be like, that's an all-pro. That dude is talked about as Saquon Barkley, okay? Saquon Barkley went the 2nd overall pick. I think Bijan, I'm not calling him a lock. I'm not going that far. But I do think he's a top 10 pick.
All right, so we're going to double our gentleman's bet right now because I don't see the NFL and the way that the running back position has been devalued over the last couple of years. Having a running back, and granted, if you're going to take a running back top 10, Bijan's probably the guy to do it with. I just don't see that happening, and I think you're starting to see a couple reports of how the Eagles are just not going to want to do that. Dude, look at what they lost on the defensive side of the ball in free agency, man.
I am all in, if I'm the Eagles, on Kalijah Cansey. If Jalen Carter was there, you do that so fast.
Yep.
You do that so fast. If Christian Gonzalez was there, you do that so fast.
Moonwalk to the podium.
Yeah, you even if those two guys aren't there. Kalijah Cansey, Lucas Van Ness, Miles Murphy, Devin Witherspoon. Be crazy and take Brian Branch for just giggles. Like, there's a lot of options there that are not a running back. Yep. And that's the way the Eagles should look at it. You know what? Be jerks and take Jackson Smith-Njigba. Put him in the slot. just because we can. Just because we can.
Just for fun. And then I think the final one, I'm seeing a lot of like 3 tight ends going in the first round smoke. Are you buying that at all? Because we talk about the running back position being devalued a lot. Tight end, I feel like, has been devalued a little bit over time as well.
Dude, this is a deep tight end class, which means that teams are not going to value that position in the first round. There's also quite a few teams that just have bigger needs, and there's a lot of good defensive talent here for teams to target. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks in the first round. We could see 5 guys with the 4 obvious ones and Hendon Hooker go in the first round. There's just not a lot of guys. Who is the tight end in the first round? I have no idea. I'm a Dalton Kincaid fan. Michael Mayer's the most complete of the guys. Darnell Washington is 6'8". Dude's a power forward out there. People like Luke Musgrave. I personally don't get it, but I get the profiles there, like just the upside. Spoiler alert, for my mock draft, I only have 1 tight end in the first round, and I feel confident in him going first round. But at the same time, Donnie, I don't think there's a single guy that I would be willing to wager money on and say, yeah, he's going first round. It could be any of those 4 guys. I do not. If you set the over even at 2.5, let alone like 3.5, I'm taking the under. I am. Set it at 1.5. I'm taking the under.
Yeah, same. I'm sure there's a lot of great, talented guys who just love football that play the tight end position, not in the
Dude, you
first
got
round.
like
There's
Laporta
so
from
many
Iowa. There's a lot of guys here to vet through. There's no need to spend a first round pick on a position that nobody, like having Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce or George Kittle. That's a luxury. Plus, if you look at those 3 guys that are the top 3 in the NFL, none of them were first round picks, people. You can get tight ends in the mid rounds. You can get tight ends near the end of the draft. You do not need to spend a first round pick. This is not anti tight end. You take the best players available. But this year, with the depth at the position and the rest of the talent here, don't take a tight end early.
I think I would agree. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Just make sure you guys check out the mock that's coming out on Wednesday. There's trades included, and I mean some blockbuster trades. It'll be updated for all the trades that are going on, like the Aaron Rodgers trade today, already updated for that situation. Check it out. Get invested in the draft. Me and Donnie will have some amazing draft content that'll be going on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We'll have an updated board for all the Cardinals picks, all the Cardinals transactions. We'll be breaking down big news. Bottom line, people, if you're looking for Arizona Cardinals coverage for the 2023 NFL Draft, All Cardinals is your one-stop shop for everything.
Yep, all Cardinals all the time, baby. For Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Druin. Go to follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. Follow Richie on Twitter at Richie Brads with the Z36. Until next time, catch you later. Go Cards.